Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Gananaam Tva Ganapatikum Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jyeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashranvannotibhis Sidasadanam Shri Mahaganadhipataye Namaha. Namaste. We are starting the text called the Bhagavad Gita, and I will tell you the meaning of that in a little while. Before that, I want to give a little introduction as to why we would study a text like this. So the assumption, or the assumption is that an individual is essentially, not essentially, but is ignorant to begin with. But the essential nature is that which is so powerful and amazing, but it is always hidden. So it needs to be something that has to be brought out by removing the layers of ignorance. Okay. So having said that, can anybody study this and gain the benefit? The answer is no, because this person would first want their ignorance to be removed. In most cases, people don't want their ignorance to be removed. They love being in ignorance, That's the problem. I don't know why. They even get upset if you say that you're ignorant. I mean, of course, this may be a great scholar of something. They may have scholarship of the knowledge of physics or whatever. They may be great scholars. And then if you go and tell them you're ignorant, of course they're going to take offense to it, right? And if they still find themselves in a class like this, then their attitude would be a condescending one, right? So they sit there with a condescending attitude, and they will reject everything that's being said in the class. For such a person, it will not have any impact. This knowledge will not change anything in them, because they don't want to change in the first place. So I wanted to bring that up because I'm going through something in my own life right now where I'm trying to change the mind of a person whose mind doesn't want to be changed, So you have facts with you. This person is doing something which is not right, and it is very obvious, and his decision is going to affect so many people adversely, okay? And so it is important to try to get this person to see things clearly. And it is pretty easy, because most of the time you do stuff based on an assumption which is a misunderstanding, right? So all you have to do is clear that misunderstanding, and then you can go ahead and do the right thing now, right? But this person is convinced that he is right, and so whatever, I can be as logical, and I can point out the things as clearly as it can be pointed out, but this person just doesn't want to see it. So what he will do is, he will just reject all of it. He'll act as if he did not read any of it, he did not look at any of it. He'll act as if he did not understand any of it, and you just brush it aside, and even go to the extent of saying, what you think doesn't matter. What you think just doesn't matter. He'll go up to the extent of saying that, rather than change his own attitude, change his own mistake, correct his own mistake. He will not do that. So that's what I'm saying. So no matter how well you're able to present it, if the other person doesn't want to, doesn't have an open mind, doesn't want the ignorance to be removed, it just doesn't want it. That's it. So it will not work. So it'll only work in a mind which is pure. It is prepared. It has knowledge in it, but it also has humility. Actually, what knowledge teaches you is humility. Any knowledge you gain, what it teaches is humility. That therefore, if you have really gained the knowledge, then you would also be humble. There's no question about it. It is the obverse and reverse of the same coin. Knowledge and humility is the obverse and reverse of the same coin. Okay, it cannot exist independently. So if a person is arrogant of the knowledge, has no humility, that means that this person has no knowledge, no real knowledge. This person is pretending to have some knowledge. He's able to put on a good show, just show us if there's knowledge. That's it. There's no deep understanding of anything, right? That's what it means. So when a person is humble and has this, real desire to learn something from being here or listening to this text, that's the person who's really going to gain the benefit of studying this. Okay, and what kind of benefit it is, I can't even begin to express how wonderful it would be. Those are the kinds of benefits that you're going to gain by studying a text like Bhagavad Gita. Okay, now Bhagavad Gita is called a Smriti. Smriti means it's a reflection of the knowledge that is revealed in the original text called Shruti. So Shruti is the original text which the rishis, they discovered, and they taught it to other people, and they've also written it down the line when they borrowed a script for Sanskrit language from another language called Devanagari. And sometime they wrote it down. And where they wrote it down? They took palm leaves and took a sharp object and wrote it down on those. So that's what we had. And because of that, a lot of it got destroyed. And also, some of these palm leaves had information as to how to cure certain diseases. Some Nadi scrolls and all of that, which has the information. So much information is there along with that, because a lot of people come to an astrologer or a Nadi reader. Nadi is, I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's like the Akashic records of all the people's, their lives and all that. So when they read that, most people went to an astrologer or a Nadi reader. They went because they were suffering from a disease. As a disease which they could not find a cure for a long time. So what you would find in these scrolls is that is the medicine, or how to cure some really bad diseases which was very difficult to get rid of. So because of this, when the Britishers invaded India, they took a lot of this with them so that they can try and make it, for the medicinal values. That's what they told. They took a lot, and because of that, a lot of it is lost. And similarly, the original scriptures, which was also recorded in these palm leaves, a lot of it was lost because it was just, it's a palm leaf. If there's a fire, it'll easily catch fire, right? So because of that. But still, there's quite a lot of information still available, and there's enough information available studying which we can liberate ourselves. Then what more do we need? We are not going to complain about all those that was lost. And also in this day and age where everything is moving so fast and we are all so busy, we have all these gadgets around us, and it demands a lot of attention from us. What happens is we end up having very little time for working on ourselves. Although this is the most important thing, to work on yourself. This is the most important thing, but we lose track of that, and then we get ourselves be distracted by all these things around us. So what happens is we don't have much time. But even then, even if you're only spending some time, maybe 1 or 2 hours a day, a week, 2 hours or maybe even 3 hours a week, at the most, you will still be able to do it. So there is hope. Okay, you'll still be able to accomplish the goal. The goal is just to study this individual that you take yourself to be, and examine it from all different angles and arrive at the truth, the substratum upon which everything else is shining. Okay, so that is the importance of studying a text like this, like Bhagavad Gita. Okay, now this Bhagavad Gita is a small portion in a huge epic called the Mahabharata. So if you can imagine, the Mahabharata is the soccer field, a big soccer field. Bhagavad Gita is a soccer ball. It's that small. It's a tiny portion. And how tiny is it? It has 700 verses in it. Okay, now when I say 700, it seems like a lot, but when you look at 110,000 verses in the entire Mahabharata, now this is like a football in a small soccer ball in a big soccer field, right? So that's how the comparison is made. And there's one other such epic called the Ramayana. It's a didactic poem authored by a rishi called Valmiki Maharshi. Okay, so Mahabharata is authored by Vyasa Maharshi, and then the Bhagavad Gita portion of it is a conversation between Sri Krishna and his cousin, who also happens to be a disciple, called Arjuna. Okay, it's in the form of a dialogue between the two. Okay, and that appears somewhere in the middle of the Mahabharata. So now, if there is a society that has been greatly influenced by two poems, two such epics, it would be India. So the ethos of Indian culture is very deeply affected by the characters of these two epics called the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Okay, that you will not find that in anywhere else, really. You know this, and this is true even today. So even today, if you look at some of the TV programs in India, the popular ones at that, you'll find that there's Ramayana somewhere. There's some Ramayana. Somebody is discussing Ramayana on TV in some part of India or the other at all times. I can say that with a guarantee, because I'm myself watching such a YouTube show, and it's amazing how they bring these young children under the age of 15 who are high school students, and lower, maybe middle school and high school kids. So they come and they are asked multiple choice questions on Ramayana. So they ask the names of certain people, characters, or the parents of certain characters, which are not very commonly used. And they would ask certain questions, and they also ask certain philosophical questions. I was amazed to notice that. I was really happy that this is still prevalent, in some parts of, not even just some remote parts, but in some cities as well. So there's children from different schools come, and they ask these questions. That's one part of the show. And the next part is they have to sing a verse from the Ramayana, and then so one child will sing it. You should just look at the verse and sing it suddenly. They cannot, obviously there are 38,000 verses or something in Ramayana. And they obviously haven't memorized everything, so they'll show the verse on a screen. So the child looks at it and she would sing it on the spot. She has to come up with the tune on the spot and sing it. And so it's amazing to see how they're all trained to do that, And then the next child will look at that and they'll give a description, because these verses are in an ancient language, So you can call it Malayalam, but it is not the spoken language. There's a different language used. It's slightly different from the colloquial language that is used in the scriptures. Okay, so this Ramayana was written by Eഴുത്തച്ഛൻ in Malayalam, and Malayalam's Ramayana is different from the original Valmiki's Ramayana. Okay, so Eഴുത്തച്ഛൻ has written his own version. The characters are the same, the main storyline is the same, but he presents it in his own way. And he has presented it with more philosophy in it than the original Ramayana. The original Ramayana, you don't find much philosophy. But this is called Adhyatma Ramayana, where he has included some quite a lot of philosophy in it. I'm amazed to see it. So as even the children are explaining it, so we learn from the children, It's amazing. So they give the meaning in their own words. So they basically look at this language, ancient language, and then they are translating it in their own words. Wow, it's just, I'm blown away by that. Anyway, so what my point is that the ethos of Indian culture is deeply influenced by these two epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana. And in Mahabharata, there are many, many, many stories, because there are 110,000 verses, right? I hope that's what I said earlier, but yeah. So to be able to look at all of, there are many stories through that, to be able to study all of that is very difficult. So what people do is they focus on the Gita. Unfortunately, that Gita is becoming less and less popular these days, So people, I mean, there are more people outside of India studying Gita today than in India itself. There are still some people studying it, but it is not as much as it's being studied by people in the rest of the world, really. So that's what is going on. But it is being studied, and they still look to the earlier part of Sri Krishna's life, which is where he was growing up in Vrindavan. And so that part is still very, very popular. People love it. They look at the stories of it and they speak of Sri Krishna, and their lives also is influenced by some of the stories that come from Krishna's life, Sri Krishna's life. Okay, so but then when your focus is on studying the philosophy, then you have to leave that part alone, the Krishna story part alone, and the Gita, and you have to focus on the Gita Krishna, where he teaches the philosophy, in this book. So there is a big difference between studying this text called the Bhagavad Gita versus the original text, the Shruti, the Vedas. There's a difference between the two. If you study the Vedas, it'll tell you what is the nature of the self indirectly. You cannot tell the nature of the self directly, because it's the ultimate subject, right? So if I ask you, are you able to see your own eyes with your own eyes? Your answer would have to be no, right? I see, like if you look, you can look at anything, anything in the room around you. You can look at anything with your eyes. You can even look at the glass. I'm wearing glasses, right? I can even look at the glasses. If I focus on it, I can see the glasses. But that's where it stops. I cannot look at my eyes with my own eyes. Right now, if I want to look at my eyes, I can't do that. Why? Because in the field of sight, your eyes are the ultimate subject. So the subject has to become an object of the subject, right? It is not possible. So the subject has to be the subject and the object simultaneously, and that is not possible. That's why your eyes cannot see your eyes. And that is the same reason why the self cannot know the self, because the self is the ultimate knower of everything else. So the self cannot know itself. Does that make sense? Yes. So that's the reason we say scriptures has to be studied with the teacher and of course the teacher who can handle the scriptures, right? The scriptures and the teacher is important when you study Vedanta. The reason is the teacher is performing the action of showing you a mirror, so that you can see your eyes now. If you want to look at your eyes, you need a mirror. So the teacher is the mirror. So all the teacher is doing is showing you the self from a different perspective, right? So then you can abide as the self. So that is the role of a teacher and the scriptures, so that you can know the self. You can never figure it out on your own, unless you are given to thinking like the original rishis. Original rishis discovered it because they did this inward journey and they discovered it. And these days, you will not find. Let me say, it's extremely rare for somebody to figure it out on their own, discover it on their own. It is extremely rare, and if at all they figured it out, then there must have been instances where they were exposed to teachings like this, either in this lifetime or maybe in another lifetime, because we have proof. We have seen that happening throughout the years. There was the example is a great rishi called Ramana Maharshi. He is supposed to have gained the knowledge without actually studying the scriptures with a teacher. This is what is believed, okay? There's no proof that that's how he gained it, but he seemed to have figured it out. But then he has himself authored 3 texts. And if you look at those texts, there's no way he could have written that without studying some of the other scriptures. Okay, because the references are there and all the hints are there that it is coming from the original texts. So then we have to go and then we have to say that he was exposed to it somehow or the other, if not in this lifetime, in some other lifetime. So this is how we arrive at that conclusion. Okay, so it is imperative that you have a teacher who can handle the scriptures and decipher it for you. Okay, and if you have an open mind, a pure mind, and you really want liberation, and that's your only goal, then it is yours. It is your birthright to be liberated. Okay, and have all the benefits of gaining the knowledge, and there are many. Okay, if you study the text called Tattva Bodha, the introduction, it will cover what the qualification that you need to require, what the qualifications that is required for a student to be able to understand the essence of the scriptures. Okay, and that essence happens to be yourself, your own real self. Okay, so these are the two poems or epics which are extremely popular in India. Let's talk about the author of this. His name is Badarayana. Okay, Badarayana, because in the island that he grew up, there were lots of badari trees. Okay, there were lots of badari trees, and I think the biological name for that is jujube. I don't know if you've heard that, jujube trees. So it was completely covered with jujube trees, and since he hails from that particular island, he's called Badarayana. Okay, another name for him is Krishna. So now you'd wonder, there's another Krishna. Actually, there are many Krishnas. You know why? Krishna is a color. It's the color of the skin, which is black or dark, right? And Badarayana happened to be dark-skinned. Therefore, he's called Krishna. Anyone who has a dark skin is called Krishna. Okay? And so Badarayana is called Krishna based on his skin color. Okay? So he's called Badarayana based on the place that he hails from, which happens to have lots of badari trees. And then he's also called Dvaipayana. Dvaipayana means one who hails from an island. An island is a dweep. Dweepam is dweepam ayanam yasya saha dvaipayanaha. This is the etymology. So he hails from an island. Therefore, he's called Dvaipayana. Okay. So this is how people were named those days, I suppose. And then the river that was actually, this was an island inside in a river. Okay, and that river was Saraswati River. The Saraswati River doesn't exist anymore, but in those days it used to flow, and there was an island in that river, and that was the island that Badarayana hails from. Anyway, so then he later on gained the title. It is a title called Vyasa. Now that also became his name. So some people believe that Vyasa is a name, but it is not a name. It's actually a title. A title for someone who compiles all the information and edits them and organizes them. Such a person is called Vyasa. Also because he is one who writes elaborately. You can tell from the number of verses, there are 110,000 verses, right? So it's someone who says elaborately. He just takes one topic and he can elaborate on it for hours and hours or days and days or pages and pages. Such a person is called Vyasa too. But what happens is Vyasa, when he writes the Bhagavad Gita, he becomes a samasa, which is the opposite of Vyasa. He writes it in a short form, okay? Which is, for him, a short version is 700 verses. Now, if I were to sit down and write something, I can't even probably write one verse, okay? So, right? So it's itself is a great work, but for him it was not a big deal. It was so easy compared to the other work that he did.